Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Earth Station 1 segment on Victor Victoria. It is our LGBTQIA plus segment.
There's so many things you have to put on the list now.
There are so many. Yeah, I kind of defaulted to just saying queer because it kind of covers everything. But then some, especially younger people, are offended by queer, so I give up. You
can't make everybody happy, Mary. You really can't.
No, you can't. Look, queer is a reclaimed word. God darn it, in my vocabulary. Anyway, I am Mary Ogle, and I am happy to be here to talk about LGBTQIA plus, the compendium of letters issues. And joining me are Director Mike Faber.
Hey, everybody. It is going to be a really good one tonight. And you know what? Thank you, Mary, for taking over hosting duties for the segment.
Oh, absolutely. And also, last but not least, Michael Gordon.
Howdy. Yes, yes. Thank you for. Well, I mean, we knew that this type of show was going to continue, and it's of course it's in honor of Darren. But we still will make sure that these segments, these shows are done.
Mm-hmm. We're still going to continue them, and it's weird because this is the first one we've done without Darren involved, and this was actually the last one he actually planned for us to do. And so, we're doing this in his honor and his memory, folks.
Yes, this is one that Darren chose, the last one that Darren chose. And it is, I know he's not here physically, but his spirit definitely lives on in our discussion. Yeah, I mean, Darren is not somebody who you forget.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, we needed to say it, and I'm glad we did. And I thank you both for being willing to continue these discussions.
There's never a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, they're needed. Representation is very important, and if we can do a small part for that, then I'm really happy to do it. And that being said, let's talk about Victor Victoria.
Woohoo!
Woo!
1982.
1982. Yeah.
Gracious.
I'm feeling old. I was a junior in high school. You guys were even younger. I'm the old lady here.
I think I was a freshman. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, let's not even talk about that. That's so unfair. But, probably anybody listening to this has seen Victor Victoria. I have seen it about 5 million times.
You will be spoiling it, folks, so if you haven't seen
it. Yes, it's we will be spoiling the ancient comedy. So had you guys seen it before?
I had not.
I had seen it when it first came out to the movies. So my parents loved Blake Edwards movies. They had taken us to the Pink Panther movies. They had taken us to see so many different films that he had done since the 50s and everything. And so they were, anytime Blake Edwards came out with a movie, except for they didn't take us to see 10. I wonder why, But yeah.
Well, the one before this is SOB. You went,
right. Yes, that's the one I was going to reference.
That's true. And that's where Julie Andrews bears it all.
Exactly.
Yes. Did you see Breakfast at Tiffany's? That's one of his too.
Oh, Breakfast with Tiffany's is a true classic.
Yeah.
Someday we'll have to review that up here on the podcast. But yeah, no, my parents took us to go see this one, and they were, because they were like thrilled that both my sister, who was like 3 years younger than me, we both loved it. We both were like, thrilled to see it. But it's probably been at least 10 years since I've seen it. So it was nice.
Yeah, as I said, this is my first viewing of it. I've been aware of it, of course. It's not something I was not wanting to ever see. It was not objectionable in any way to me. I was not opposed to seeing it. It's just it just never worked out. I didn't see it in the theater. Yeah, I just other movies, I guess, came and went, and this one was always one of those ones that I was curious about. I'd heard good things about, particularly regarding Julie Andrews and her performance. Blake Edwards is kind of a toss-up, hit or miss for me. Sometimes he's brilliant, other times, not so much.
That's
So, but after seeing this, I would say that this is definitely on the more brilliant side. This is a really solid one from him.
Yeah, I adore this movie, even though, yes, there are problematic things about it. If we are going to talk about looking at it from a gay or ally perspective. But I still find it very enjoyable. It's very much a product of its time. There was kind of a weird thing going on in the early 80s where kind of mainstream studios were basically trying to win the gay market. And so they would release movies like this that were sort of they had
gay or gay adjacent.
I hate to say gay friendly. They had gay people in them, but from a straight point of view usually. And
sure.
So
yeah, it is interesting because this comes out the same year as Dustin Hoffman does Tootsie. It came out the same year as John Lithgow is in playing a transvestite in World According to Garp.
The Garp, right?
Other partners, personal best. Yentl even is a woman dressed as a man in 1983. And Cruising is around this time as well, Making Love as well. And so there seemed to be this, it is interesting that there's this sort of boon of movies featuring sort of drag characters, gay characters, adjacent, that kind of thing. I do wonder, I mean, normally Hollywood only gets on a trend if it's making money. And I do wonder if they thought something was making money, like if they thought this was going to make money, so that's why they kept coming out with these at this time, because I don't remember anything really like boom, like coming out and shocking everybody, and then Hollywood following with a lot of little films. But it is interesting that and this is also right at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, right?
Well, it's been a few years actually since the AIDS epidemic started. It started sort of the end of 70s, beginning of the 80s. But yeah, let's set the scene actually. 1982. We're definitely getting pretty heavily into the AIDS crisis by then.
It was still a lot of it called, they called it the gay disease. They didn't really call it AIDS at that point yet.
Yeah, the gay disease. I remember that. Thank you, American government.
Mm-hmm.
They called it gay cancer. So I'll tell you where I was around this time. Like I said, I was a junior in high school, but just the 80s in general. I was a very closeted lesbian living in a very small living in between a small and a large southern town, where it was not accepted at all to be gay unless you wanted to be killed. And you think I'm joking. I am not joking. I mean, hurt. You were going to be hurt. People were not open about it. A few years after this, when I'm in college, my car will be vandalized, my tires will be slashed, my windshield cracked, gay slurs written on it. I will walk into a mall and have a screaming match with a very public. Now this wouldn't happen today probably, and a very public place where a very prominent table was set up in the middle with people saying gay people deserve to die, handing out little pamphlets about how this was an act of God. So this was the 80s, people. It was not gay friendly. Interesting that Victor Victoria, set in 1934 in Paris at a time when it actually was easier to be more open about being gay. This was before World War II. It was the same way in Berlin, of all places. In fact, Nazism was kind of fascism in general was kind of a reaction to that, much like has happened today, where things have started to become more open and people have turned around and attacked the people who are just trying to live their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why Darren picked this movie, is that the time leading up to fascism is kind of paralleling our own.
It's interesting, too, because this was set right about the same time Cabaret was set, too.
Yes.
In the same era.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, what I was finding interesting, too, is that this movie is, I mean, even though it's a Blake Edwards written movie, it's based on a movie that came out in 1933, a German movie called Victor and Victoria. The plot is similar, not exactly the same, but similar. And I find it interesting that it's a German movie. Now, there was a American language version, I think, that came out the following year called George and Georgette. And it was remade a couple of other times. But this is pre-code, right? The 30s, early 30s are pre-code. So movie studios could get away with a little bit more, pushing the envelope a little bit more, showing characters that when the Hays Code and all that would come into play in a couple of years, as you mentioned, even not as extreme as fascism, but still a reaction to it would happen in the States, where this sort of thing this sort of subject would not be touched for another 5 decades almost.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting. I think that like Edwards chose to keep this set in this time period. I think that was, in a way, a kind of not really a statement, but a subtext of gay life today, or even in the 80s, and with the AIDS crisis going on, and how
you probably could have used the same. You probably could have done this same plot in the 80s. I mean, this takes place in 82. But I find it interesting that they kept it in this time period, maybe because they thought more people, it would appeal to people because it was in the past rather than present.
I'm sure that had something to do with it. I mean, that's one way of kind of queer coding something like this, even though it's a little more in the open than just being coded. But it's a way to make it more palatable to people. I'm being presented with this, but I'm not necessarily seeing this in my everyday life, even though they are. but their eyes are just not quite as open to it. So I find that very interesting that he retained that, and I have a feeling that's one of the reasons. Julie Andrews is known as being very outspoken about her support of gay people. She has lent her name and her time to a lot of gay causes. She was, I don't really know Blake Edwards' stance on it, though there are all sorts of rumors about Blake Edwards, but whatever, rumors are rumors. Who cares? It doesn't really matter. And even though this movie sort of ends in a way that kind of conforms to quote unquote traditional values, as far as what Julie Andrews decides to do, or her character decides to do. One thing I found very refreshing about it was that the gay people aren't killed.
Yes, that's always good.
Toddy and Squash do not hold hands and go running off a cliff together. Nobody needs to commit suicide. Nobody dies tragically of a disease, or and that is not something that even to this day a lot of not just gay people, but any sort of character that's not in the mainstream, any sort of marginal character. We talked about this on a previous podcast once about how also, people of color, they're the ones that are killed in the movies. The marginal people are not, even if they are there, they're not represented well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things I like about this movie is that here you're supposed to feel affection for Toddy. You're supposed to admire Toddy.
Oh, Toddy's awesome in this.
Yeah.
Robert Preston plays it so well.
Yeah, plus Robert Preston, is amazing. The musical numbers in this movie are so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do give credit too. I mean, Robert Preston and Alex Karras both. Alex Karras in particular, being a former NFL player who turned to acting. I find it both interesting that both of these gentlemen are sort of taking a chance, like playing gay men in a very high profile movie.
Mm-hmm.
That people are going to see, and in a way that they're not. I mean, it is a funny movie, but I never get the feeling that they're the butt of the jokes.
No,
not at all.
Yeah,
no,
not at all.
Which I think their relationship is actually treated really nicely, I think, and Robert Preston. This is a guy who was stealing hearts in Music Man and all these shows and movies and stuff like that.
He was beloved for Music Man.
But he, I'm watching this and I'm going, man, he is so good. Like, I totally buy him as this character.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Oh yeah, he's very believable.
And he actually, I find it kind of funny because I was reading some of the reviews from when this first came out, and they talk about how flamboyant Robert Preston's character is, and I'm looking at him like he's really restrained. I mean, they obviously have not seen RuPaul's Drag Race.
But
again, it's a product of its time.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the people who are against cross-dressing or gay people in this movie are the ones who are the bad guys.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, absolutely. And I mean, they're shown to be bullies or fools. They are not celebrated.
Yeah, I find that really kind of. I was surprised by that. I thought maybe Blake and company would be taking pot shots at because Blake. Traditionally, he takes shots at everything. I mean, I don't see that he singles one group out among others. Certainly in the Pink Panther movies or other comedies, he just likes to take the piss out of things. And in this, he seems to be, as you pointed out, kind of restrained, where it's like, I'm going to tell this story, and even though this person is doing a thing where she's fooling, she's trying to pull this thing off and fool a lot of people. She's not the bad person here. And in fact, all the people who are outsiders normally in life are not the bad people here.
Mm-mm. No, and it's interesting. It's very supportive, the community that they had in Paris.
Yeah.
And and it was not frowned upon if somebody was gay or if somebody was bisexual or even a cross-dresser or trans.
When she gets reported to the cops, I found it interesting that she wasn't reported for, being gay or transvestite or anything like that. She was reported for being a fraud. Because I was like, that surprised me because I was like, what, that, I mean, maybe that's the difference in setting it in Paris and setting it in New York.
Well, yeah, I think it was. I mean, I think there was kind of a tradition in Paris at that time.
Right. Famously,
they performers and drag.
Performers, black performers, Josephine Baker, et cetera, et cetera. It seemed like Paris was a lot more welcoming to folks of all kinds.
Mm-hmm. And that's what made it fascinating was, it's just like everyone was comfortable with it. Everyone didn't question it. And, it was the people who wanted to bust, Victoria were the people that were felt like, oh, well, she's taking our money, and such. And, you had the other club owner who was, sent the private detective and everything because she, like, hey, they're pulling the wool over
the Clouseau-like detective.
Yeah,
Oh,
yes, very much so.
I was almost fully expecting, because I think Peter Sellers had passed by this point.
Yeah, he was supposed to be in this movie, but I think he was supposed to be in the Robert Preston role.
I couldn't see it.
Yeah, boy, that's hard to picture. I did not know that.
No, I didn't either.
He was supposed to. It was when I was reading it, or what I read is that he was supposed to. It was developed a lot earlier when he was still alive, and it was supposed to be him and Julie Andrews still. And I think James Gardner was always attached to it as well. But James and Julie have a history. They've worked together, and they get along really well, and they make a great couple.
Yeah, I have to say, even the King Martian character, who, I mean, even though he kind of walks around trying to prove his masculinity by, walking into a bar and starting a fight and that sort of thing. But he comes across as pretty accepting when his bodyguard announces that he's gay. I mean, he's awesome. Yeah, he's surprised. But he's not, he's not like, get away. Yeah, he's not get away from me, or you're fired, or I'm going to tell my goons to kill you, or, nothing like that. He's just like, okay, well, things are weird now, and I'm just going to accept this.
He's like, this is the weirdest trip to Paris I've ever had.
Or, as Judy said, it was like, he's the nicest gangster I've ever seen.
Right. He's not a gangster. He's just a businessman.
Exactly. He's a club owner.
Like I said, I do think Julie and James make a great couple, and I'm sort of, I was rooting for them as well. Then part of it is because James Gardner's character is one that's pretty open, despite the fact that you wouldn't traditionally think he would be. But I did read that Blake Edwards always looked back on this saying that he wished he was braver, because he put in the scene where he finds out, that she's a woman by spying her in the bath, and that wasn't originally supposed to be there, but he wasn't brave enough to just have the scene where he doesn't find out, and it doesn't matter if she's a man or a woman. Yeah,
I mean I was going to bring that scene up too. That's a pretty problematic scene. He basically stalks her.
Oh, big time.
He hides in the cupboard in her bathroom and spies on her while she's getting undressed and getting into the bath. That is not something that serves his character well. And yeah, but I had that thought when I was watching that. I almost thought, I wonder if the studio told Blake Edwards, you have to do this, or something like this.
I don't know if it came from the studio. I know Blake said that he said that he wished he was braver and didn't put that in there. Because the line is still there where he says, I don't care if you're a man or a woman.
Right.
I love you, or whatever. And then kisses her. And that's a powerful scene, but it is taken. Yeah, it's less powerful because we know he knows.
Yeah.
Right.
It would have been better if you didn't know that he knew already.
Right.
And that he was just like, he was just obsessed with her. Because he was obsessed with her from the very first time he saw her.
Right, but even when he thinks she's a man.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, to be fair, he never believes it.
Well, he says that, but I think he is questioning a little bit.
Oh, questioning, sure, but
yeah. But I first of all, I would have been shocked if in the 80s he had not found out she was a woman before really deciding, to pursue her, because it was the 80s. That just wasn't good. That just wasn't going to happen. So I'm disappointed at that directing choice, but I'm not surprised. And I think that I don't think he could have got away with it at that time. I don't think Blake Edwards could have got away with not having a scene like that. in there.
Maybe. I don't know. I'd like to think not. I mean, I'd like to think that he could. I mean, this is a guy who, bared his wife's breasts in the movie right before this,
It's not the same though.
No, you're right.
You're not the same.
It's not. You're absolutely right.
It's okay to show a woman naked. It's not okay to show two men kissing, at least at this point in time.
Right.
No, it's
most of the characters, even in the ones that movies that I mentioned before that came out in the 80s, like World According to Garp or Tootsie. I mean, Bill Murray plays a gay character in that movie, but he never kisses anybody.
Mm-hmm.
We never see him be gay. We just, he is.
Yeah, I mean, we see Toddy and Squash, the bodyguard, just
in bed
together in bed.
Yeah, but you don't see them be physical.
Right. It almost made me think of, remember back in the old I Love Lucy's where they had the separate twin beds?
Yes.
Because at that time you couldn't even show a straight couple.
Right.
They were both in their silk pajamas. They weren't naked or anything like that.
That's what it made me think of. It's like he's this. I thought poor Blake Edwards is trying so hard to show what happened in a way that's going to keep this a mainstream movie.
Yeah, that's true.
But
I think it still works. Yeah. I think the story is fun. The actors are great. The songs are fun. And Julie is just this is a great performance from her.
She's amazing. She is absolutely amazing as both Victor and Victoria, and sort of in between, because I kind of like how she plays it when she's first talking to King, and she's kind of she's kind of going back and forth between her female persona and her male persona, and he's confused as hell. He has no idea why he's feeling what he's feeling, and they both play it really well, that kind of confusion.
Mm-hmm. They didn't do a really good job at hiding her Adam's apple, though, in the costumes either.
Yeah, the collar most of the time, but I never really believed that she was a guy. Like there was aesthetically, I never looked at her and been like, wow, Julie Andrews is playing like really looks like a dude here. I always kind of knew, but I mean, I knew anyway, but I don't think they didn't. Well, obviously they didn't make her look butch, because even when she was a guy, he was supposed to be a female impersonator, so he was always going to look feminine.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, well, it would have been hard to make, I think, Julie Andrews look butch. I mean, just the body type. She has very delicate bone structure, and even though, of course, in real life, anybody could call themselves butch and take on that persona and be that, if that's what they are, no matter what you look like. But in this film, she's a twink.
Fair enough. I definitely could see that. And it was interesting, but I liked the interactions that, she was believable though. And I love every time when she performed and then she pulled the wig off and everything. That was just
yes. Awesome. And the look on her face when she did that, it was so defiant.
Mm-hmm. Like, look at me.
Yes. This is who I am.
Mm-hmm. I love
Take it or leave it.
Everything.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of questions here about gender nonconformity and gender fluidity, and though I will say that they still kind of keep to stereotypes of what a man is and what a woman is. Even when she's portraying a man, she has to act a certain way to be perceived as a man, or when she's a woman, she has to act a certain way to be perceived as a woman. Which, in real life, it's a spectrum, and
Yeah, as well.
That's just not, that's just not the way it is. But in here, it's actually pretty rigid. Those roles of male and female.
I do like the way that Preston, in particular, Toddy is challenging those. I mean, he has a couple speeches where he says something to the effect of like, "There are all types of men. There's not just one kind of man. Like, I'm a man," and he's not ashamed to say he's a man. But he's a gay man, and he's not. He doesn't seem to be ashamed of that either. He doesn't seem to be ashamed of much. As a matter of fact, they talk about that too, where he's like, he doesn't know what shame is. I mean, I think he really does, but
no, he does.
I mean, his character is not afraid to be who he is, and that might mean that he gets fired or causes fights or does this or that or the other thing, but he's gonna be who he is.
Yes.
And I think he's brilliant in this. The ending sequence where he's doing Julie Andrews' number in drag is so good. And I read that they did it in one take.
Oh wow!
So that was just that. So the reason why he's sweaty and the dress is torn. The dress is torn to this day because it was her dress that he used. Everything like. Is what you see is what they showed, and all his comments and everything that was ad lib. That's all Robert Preston doing that, and I just thought he was brilliant in that.
He was amazing. That's one of my favorite scenes.
It's
so wonderful.
It's so wonderful.
I didn't laugh out loud very often, but during that sequence, I must have laughed out loud at least 3 or 4 times.
It was awesome though, because it was streaming on HBO, so it was nice to Max. Yeah. That's right. That's
Max, the home of HBO.
Exactly. So, but yes, it was awesome to be able to watch, and we actually watched it Saturday night, and then I went back to, watch parts of it again earlier today. So it was pretty awesome to be able to, make sure I caught up with everything. And it's just as enjoyable as I remember seeing it as a kid.
Yeah, I think it holds up pretty well, and I think the fact that it takes place in 34 kind of helps give it a timeless quality. Even because obviously it was done in the 80s, but yet it doesn't feel like a 34 movie, but it still has that. It has that beautiful Art Deco aesthetic, which I just love.
The sets in here and the costumes are amazing. The production values are spot on.
Yes. I mean, I'm like, I want to live in that world. I never say I want to live in Paris, but this Paris, I'm like, oh yeah, I wouldn't mind living here.
Yeah, just be careful of the cockroaches at the restaurant.
Well, only if I had money. I wouldn't want to be poor or broke in this town.
Well,
scene where Julie Andrews was outside of the restaurant watching that guy eat the eclair.
Yes.
Oh, it's just like, oh.
Who eats an eclair on the side? I'm like, that's just cruel.
I think that guy was just inhaling it. So it's
yes. But actually, that one thing I like about the Julie Andrews character is, even though she needs to take on this male persona in order to find in order to gain power and prestige in society, she's still portrayed as a strong woman. I mean, even before she does that, even when she's starving, she's got, there's a fire behind her. There's a determination. She's not giving up. She's just trying to find a way to survive. And she's just very strong and very confident. Except when she's starting to question whether she's going to continue this romance with King or keep being the drag impersonator.
It was interesting because I felt like she got stronger as this movie went on, the story went along, because she became more and more confident in herself and everything, because she was a very weak character when you first meet her. Hell, she's almost raped in the hotel room by the hotel manager.
Yeah, see, that's another problematic issue with this movie is that they really play that for laughs. That's not funny.
No,
Yeah, I
not
mean,
at all.
almost being sexually assaulted,
Yeah,
and it's very clear that's what's almost about to happen. I mean,
yeah,
the guy drops his trousers,
yep,
and you know what she is what women have to do in order to survive. Because I mean, she's hardly the only woman who's ever done something like that.
right. So that was just really interesting, and I do think there's so many points in this movie where it goes from very funny, very humorous to very serious very quickly, and then back again. And that's a really good sign from Blake Edwards and everything, that he had the history to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say also that I think the ending undercuts her strength because this happens so much, so many times in movies where the woman or the marginalized character, it's not always the woman, who gives up their life for the other person. You know, there isn't a compromise here.
Mm-mm.
She decides to, at first she says she's not going to give it up, but then at the end she decides she will. And I'm tired of seeing that. I'm tired of seeing especially women in these types of movies giving up their lives for whoever their romantic prospect is, usually a man. And I think it undercuts the message of the movie. That the message of the movie is be yourself. Actually, even though she has to not be herself to gain power and prestige, but that's kind of the point of it. That's a statement on society's expectations and how it shouldn't be that way. I think the ultimate message of the movie is be yourself, except he completely undercuts it at the end.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I don't know that I felt that it was completely undercut. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I do think that's all too common in romantic comedies. So I get it. But I was surprised. I did like the fact that even though Gardner's character was saying like you need to give this up, she was saying, well, you need to give up what you do. Like you're hanging out with gangsters. You say you're not a gangster or a mobster, but you're hanging around with mobsters. You do business with mobsters. You got to give that up. So both of them give that up at the end to do whatever. I mean, we don't know what they're going to do afterwards. Both of them are different. I imagine they'll both live. Maybe I don't know if they'll live in Paris or live wherever, but I imagine they're going to try to live in a place where they are completely not doing what they were doing before.
Well, if they stay in Paris in about 6 years, they are going to be very unhappy.
Not even 6 years.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Ouch.
But yeah, also it'll be interesting.
Well, there's not any places many places in the world they're going to be able to go in 6 years and not be.
They might be better off in Chicago, and
yep.
when you get closer to 1940.
He never ended up signing that form though to sign over the clubs back to the guy.
Yeah, see, I got the feeling that they would probably end up going back to Chicago because he did not get rid of the nightclub.
Yep.
Oh, I thought he did. Sorry, I thought he did give that.
No.
But I mean, it's not stated explicitly, so we don't really know.
Yeah, and to your point, it should have been like that would have been a better, to have both of them start fresh together would have been a nice ending. I think a nicer ending.
Yeah. Oh, a nightclub in Berlin we could go work at. No, that's
with Joel Grey.
Yeah.
So it's interesting and everything, but yes, it'd be very interesting to see, what their stories would have been and everything. But I think it ended at the right spot. But I agree with Mary that she shouldn't have given up being Victor and everything. But I don't think she would have survived King would have stayed with her if she did.
I don't think she should have given up performing, and I don't think she's going to, but I don't think she was happy being Victor. I never got the sense that she was happy being Victor. She liked playing Victor, but I think by being Victor, she felt like she was limited and not herself. And I think that ultimately she needed to be Victoria. So I do think that element was there. And so even though I don't agree with, like, the guy having to say, you need to change for me, I do think that she needed to sort of come clean and be just herself and have people accept Victoria on stage rather than Victor. Yeah,
I have to agree with that. I mean, she felt like she wasn't being seen unless she had this gimmick.
Right.
And, but I mean, that wasn't even her idea. That was Tottie's.
Right. And that was Tottie's doing, not really hers.
And I don't think she minded playing it for a little while, but she didn't want to make that, her entire life, because that means hiding your entire life, which, again, that's what gay people do. Mm-hmm. They hide their entire lives. Even today, if you're decide to be out and proud, well, you're taking a chance. And yes, it is different than it was in the 80s, but it's circling back around. And like, even, when I lived in Ojai in California, I felt fairly open about being able to say, walk hand in hand with my girlfriend down the street. I would never do that in Tallahassee, unless maybe I was, at Pride, surrounded by other people who I knew were accepting, even though the Westboro Baptists are probably standing on the outskirts with their little signs. Yeah, but it's, we're one of the reasons why I think this movie still holds up is that we still have these issues going on. And yes, some things have changed. I mean, gay marriage was legalized, but it's hanging by a thread at this point because of who is on the Supreme Court, who is in control of Congress, how things can change on a dime. There's still no real security about being able to, the Supreme Court has even made noises about interracial marriage, which is insane. But it shows you how we take, you take these rights for granted, fight like hell to get them, then you become complacent, and look what happens. It turns around.
It does, and it could go just like that.
Do you think a movie like this could be made today?
I think it would be harder edged if it was made today.
Yeah, I think it would be different.
Yeah.
I think you could make it, but it would be different. I don't think it would be accepted if it was made exactly in the same way, because people would say that you are glossing over issues that you should not be glossing over. I get that. I don't know. I don't see a major studio paying for this kind of movie right now, though. I haven't seen this kind of thing presented by a major studio, not like this in a long time. Yeah, this is not, my sister and I were talking about this earlier today, actually, about whether things have changed, really changed as far as gay representation in movies. And we came to the conclusion that with the major studios, no, it hasn't really changed. What's changed is that there are other forces making movies now. There's a lot more independent studios. There's a lot more streaming services. It's easier to make your own movie, with your iPhone. There are more places to watch more content. And so what's really changed is that we have a broader view. We have more outlets. I'm not sure that the major studios themselves have changed all that much. I mean, a little bit. It's like just as much as they had to. But not in a major way, not in a really meaningful way. But I mean, right now they're just making all retreads. Anyway, it's all about the bottom line.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is a retread, so this is a remake. It was a hit, so I'm thinking like, but you're right. I don't see Disney doing a remake of this and putting it on Disney Plus. I just don't see that. And as far as the other, plus, I mean, it is kind of a lost kind of movie that, I mean, they don't make movies like this anymore. They don't make movies that are musicals much anymore. They don't make movies that have this kind of fun tone to them. Romantic comedies are not made as much anymore either. So there's a lot of things about this movie that just they're not a thing anymore. And
but also remember, though, this did have a Broadway run. Also,
it did, absolutely.
Yes. Julie Andrews did the initial Broadway run.
That's fine. I would have liked to have seen that. I don't know if
it's been amazing.
Yeah,
and that was just replaced by Liza at Talk About Cabaret.
But yeah, I would have liked to have seen that as well. That would have been fun.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, there have been strides. There have been things like Fun Home on Broadway, which started out as a graphic novel, which is a story, Alison Bechdel's story about growing up. Her father was a funeral director, and her life coming out as a lesbian. I don't think that would have been made in 1982. I can tell you that.
No. We will probably have lots more other topics, coming up that'll fit in, past this category and such too.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a very interesting discussion. I appreciate you guys coming on this journey with me because
loving it.
Because and in fact, I think we about covered it. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, if you haven't seen the movie, folks, definitely
go see it.
please.
It's a fun movie to see. It's a fun movie to talk about. I mean, it does bring up a lot of interesting ideas, I think. And like I said, I think ultimately, yes, there's some things, scenes or whatever, it's problematic, et cetera, et cetera. But I think overall, the message of the movie, the tone of the movie, the fact that it doesn't demonize gays or cross-dressing or anything like that, I think is a plus. I think it's a very positive experience seeing this movie overall.
Yeah, it's kind of a gentle movie in a way, in the sense that gay people are not not tortured, killed, stoned, thrown in jail, though they do almost end up in jail or do for a few minutes.
Couple different times.
So it's and yes, I'll say it's a product of its time, but I think it's also influenced a lot of things that came after it. I mean, I can definitely see influence in things like Will and Grace. It's something I think, especially from an historical point of view, an academic point of view, and also just an enjoyable point of view that I would recommend going to see.
Agreed. Awesome, Mary. Thank you so much for this topic.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Darren. Thank you, Darren, for choosing it, for being Most here definitely. In spirit and inspiring us. We are forever grateful for what you did.
He's looking down at us and going, "That's it, guys. Come on. I want to hear the story. Keep on going.
We could talk about this for another 3 hours."
You didn't mention this scene.
Exactly. Well, let's take a quick break and we will close up the show. So that's going to wrap up another episode of the Earth Station One podcast. I want to thank Mary so much for putting this one together for us tonight.
Oh, thank you both. I really enjoyed talking about it, and I'm looking forward to going forward and talking all about gay issues on ESO.
Any other hints of where we're going to be going next?
Well, I think I'm going to select a movie called Cloudburst, which was made in 2011. It's Olympia Dukakis and Brenda Fricker, two amazing actresses. It's the story of an older lesbian couple who escape to Canada to get married after one breaks the other one out of a nursing home.
Oh, interesting. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Never heard of that one. So.
It's well worth watching, I think.
That'd be awesome. Anything you want to shout out about?
Just happy Pride, everybody. Happy Pride.
Hey. Happy Pride. Even though here in Atlanta, they don't do Pride till October.
Nonconformists.
Yeah, damn straight. Yes, very much so. Hopefully everyone had a great June and, let their flags fly, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Folks, be happy, be who you are, and please, if you're having troubles coming out or having any issues with that, please, there are plenty of people to listen to you and to talk to you about it and everything. There's no reason for you to be unhappy. So, please.
It's better. Yes. Talking as a little gay kid who grew up in a family that had no idea how to accept me, and in a city that had no idea how to accept me, you will find your community.
Very much so. Very much so. That's going to be my shout out because, I think, folks, if you're, everyone can find their place. Everyone has their communities, and, online, there's so many outlets and stuff that are full of positivity, and please take advantage of it. And if you need, there's phone numbers, there's organizations that'll help you. And don't be fooled by the fake ones, folks. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. There is nothing wrong with it. So please, be true to yourself. That's what it's all about.
You are who you are. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Exactly. And Mr. Mike, we made it through another one, sir.
We did. And as always, it's my pleasure.
Anything you want to shout out about or?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, I reiterate everything you guys say, reinforce the fact that people like this movie, people should be themselves. Anything that is in the way of people being themselves, unless yourself is an ex-wielding murderer, that kind of thing, or just a plain old bigot, then no, don't be yourself. But otherwise, be yourself, and as Mike mentioned, there's a lot of organizations out there. I think we have to mention one that was dear to Darren's heart, which was the Lost and Found Youth of Atlanta. You can go to lnfy.org, find out more about that organization, finding safety and shelter for Atlanta's LGBTQ and youth. It helps a lot of people. I know he was involved. It was one of his favorite charities. So if you're trying to figure out how you can support people during Pride or any other time, check out that site in particular.
Awesome. That is all going for goodness, folks. Definitely check that out. And Darren would definitely be happy that, we've talked about his charity and stuff that he was very fond of and everything. That he was a huge, huge supporter with it. And, there's safe havens, folks. There are, no matter what. So please, please, please know you have your friends here at ESO also to fall back on if you just need to talk or anything. Any of the three of us would be glad to do that for you too.
Yeah, we're here.
Very much so. Very, very much so. As always, thanks for listening to the Air Station One podcast. Always remember, we couldn't do this without you. We love you guys at home. And if you want to help support the podcast, please, please check out our Tee-Public store, especially our Wonder Warrior t-shirt. And every penny we get from that is going to the charity that Mike mentioned. And that was all in Darren's honor. So definitely check out the Wonder Warrior t-shirt. All you have to do is go to the Earth Station 1 website or the ESO Network website and click on Tee-Public. And we have links on both of those. And the Wonder Warrior is one right there at the top. So definitely check it out. And I think Darren would smile and laugh to see that his face is on people's chests.
Absolutely.
Also remember, if you want to listen to our show before the rest of the world, there is the ESO Network Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can help support us here at Earth Station 1 and the rest of the ESO Network. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/ESO Network. We want to hear from you, so please write us anytime at feedback@earthstation1.com. Remember, you could also find Earth Station 1 wherever fine podcasts are found. And now Earth Station 1 could also be found in video format up on YouTube. So you can see Mary's really awesome artwork she has behind her.
Yay!
So definitely check it out. Please subscribe and tell all your friends about us. On behalf of myself, Mike Faber, Mr. Mike Gordon, and Ms. Mary Ogle, thank you for listening. We will see you here next time on Earth Station 1. And Mary, you didn't plug your artwork, so go ahead and do that real quick.
You can find me at maryogle.com or on Etsy at eVision Arts.
All right, we are out of here. Peace, and we are done. We miss you, didn't we? We miss you.
You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.